Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? Speedrunning is, I think, one of the coolest things in video games, but is there more to it than just playing games quickly? Speedrunning is actually one of those kind of subcultures that you would think on its face would be fairly shallow and straightforward, but it's actually a lot deeper than one would expect. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat to this video in that I'm not really part of the speedrunning community. I suck playing video games, normal speed. There's really no way that I would ever get good enough to actually, try to become a speedrunner. That said, I've been following that community for a while now, and I'm just incredibly impressed at what it's able to do, what speedrunners are able to accomplish, and how they go about being able to accomplish that. So within the kind of concept or sphere of speedrunning, you've got a whole bunch of different objectives. Obviously, the main goal across all of them is to try to get from start to finish, however you want to define that, as quickly as possible, from the title screen to the end credits. But within that scope, you've got different objectives or different ways of doing it. The most common, or one of the most common, is probably what they call the any percent category, where it's really just kind of, however you want to do it, however you need to do it. There really aren't any rules. It's just the timer starts when you hit, the first level, and the timer stops when you hit the end credits, something like that. And whatever method you want to use to get from that start to finish, you can use. There are no requirements for having to obtain certain items or amass a certain number of points or anything like that. If you can find a way from the very beginning of the first level to jump straight to the credits, you can do it. And there actually are some speed runs that are incredibly quick, minutes if not seconds long, because people have figured out ways to jump basically straight to the end. And under the concept of any percent, that's totally valid. And I should note that speedrunning isn't just kind of traditional platformers. It's not necessarily retro video gaming only. People can speedrun pretty much any kind of game. Modern, old, any kind of category. I mean, I think it would be difficult with some categories to define speedrunning. Like, how would you speedrun Tetris? I don't know, unless it's to try to, amass a certain number of lines within a given period of time or something like that. But really, with any game, you can speedrun it. So any percent is getting from whatever is defined as the start to whatever is the finish in as short a time as possible. Anything goes with how you want to do it in the middle. Another category, and this is the one that I like to follow and watch, is the 100% category, where it's more like you have to use whatever's built into the game as if anyone was just sitting down and playing it. This is where you need to play the game start to finish, where you can't necessarily skip levels, you can't cheat, you can't use glitches. It's just, you get the controller and you have to play like any normal person would play. You just need to do it as fast as you can. Sometimes with the 100% category, there are certain objectives, like you have to get all of a certain item. Like in Super Mario World, they may say you have to hit all of the Switch Palaces, that sort of thing. So there's more to it. Those speedruns are longer, but they're still by no means long. I mean, I watched, for a little bit of context, I watched a Sonic 2 speedrun just last night. And they used some glitches, but they didn't skip levels or anything like that. It just helped them get through each level faster. they were able to complete the entire game in like 23 minutes. And they were doing what I would consider kind of a 100% category type of style. 23 minutes to beat an entire game is pretty incredible. And there were some mistakes in there too. Like they died a couple of times trying to do some of the tricks that they were doing. So, 100% is definitely more involved, but it's still pretty impressive in its own right. There are, of course, other kind of sets of rules that people can follow. The thing about speedrunning is that there's really no kind of governing organization. It's not like an official thing. The rules aren't set in stone. They're pretty much all just kind of thought up and enforced by the community, which I think is really cool because the community figures out what standards it wants to follow. The community enforces them. The community can then adapt pretty quickly as new games come out. The community can hash out what do we want to consider the beginning, the end? What do we want to consider for each, kind of category? What do we consider a 100% run of that game? That sort of thing. And then the community also verifies results. The thing about speedrunning is that in some ways it is a competition between the speedrunners. They do try to go for the shortest time, but what I've seen, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not that deep into the community, so I don't see everything that goes on within it, but it seems to be a very kind of open and inclusive community. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of controversy, I guess, in terms of someone claiming they did something and it turns out they didn't do it. In general, if you're going to be a speedrunner and you're going to come up with a good time, you're going to record that process. You're going to screen capture it. You're going to do something as proof to show this is, what you did and something that'll back up your claim that you did it in whatever time you claim to be doing it in. So it is somewhat modern in that regard, but it's actually been around apparently for quite a while. It's just changed over time. One of the things that it's really changed over time, it seems, is what they call the tool-assisted speedruns. And this pretty much is where you take advantage of using an emulator. It can be as simple as having save states, which is a great way to help practice. Because some of the glitches and tricks that you do are very difficult to pull off, it seems. Some of them, if you don't pull them off correctly, you die. And so if you've gotten very far into a game and you try to pull this off and you die, it's a huge waste of time and I'd imagine a major frustration to have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game, and try to get back to that point to attempt it again. So save states within an emulator are a big part of that, where you can just keep trying that attempt over again. You die, okay, whatever, go back to the save state, which is just a few seconds before, try it again. Sometimes there are things that emulators can do within the game to modify how the game works in order to give a speedrunner an advantage. But what's nice is, in general, those tool-assisted speedruns are going to be declared. When someone says, hey, I just made this time in this game, they're going to say, and it was a tool-assisted speedrun, these are the things that I did. I've seen some kind of fully computer run speedruns where the person isn't really playing so much as they kind of programmed the emulator to play the game. It's not really programming in terms of, the computer figures out when to jump and all that. There's definitely some human involvement, but it's not so much a test of the person's ability to mash buttons at the right time as it is their ability to identify what is the most efficient path through the game and then program the emulator to do that. And that's where you can see incredibly short times because the emulator is going to execute it perfectly every time. So there's really no variability there. But to me, I think while those kind of emulator-based speedruns where it's fully computerized, it's interesting from kind of a theoretical perspective to see this is what the best gamer on the planet could possibly do, it's just not as fun. Because part of what I think is really cool about speedrunning is the skill. You know, it's like I said, I'm not a speedrunner because it demands more skill than I think I'm ever going to be able to produce. The ability to not only identify the fastest path through a game, but also execute on it, have that just impeccable timing, is something that takes an absolute ton of time and devotion, it seems. You know, I've heard of speedrunners taking thousands of attempts to try and execute this a particular glitch or something like that. That's very, very difficult to do. And even when they do figure out how to do it, they're not going to execute it every time. You know, it's that difficult of a thing. Yet they do it. You know, they go through and try to practice over and over and over again to figure out how that glitch works and what kind of tolerance they have to execute that glitch. Some glitches are only like one frame, you know, it's incredibly tight. It's not like you just need to go stand on this one block and jump 3 times and then, hey, look, you're transported to the end. It's like many things, many different variables have to be all kind of lined up at the same time. And to get all of those to work involves a whole bunch of planning ahead of time in that level, where if you missed even one small thing earlier in the level, something you need to be set up for you later on to execute a glitch isn't going to be there, and you've blown your chances. So it's not just a one-time thing. There's a whole lot of planning to it. And that just, it's mind-blowing to me, really, that speedrunners are able to pull some of these things off. What I like is that the community also seems to be very inclusive about showing off and sharing these tricks, sharing the fastest path, sharing the glitches, sharing the tricks, and explaining why. You know, explaining, well, if you go this way, it'll save you a half a second because of the attack pattern of this particular enemy or something like that. There seems to be a lot of information out there, and the speedrunners in general seem to be happy to share that. They seem to be happy to share their knowledge. I haven't seen a whole lot about people who are uptight and trying to, you know, keep the cards close to the vest, that sort of thing. How they find out about a lot of these tricks and glitches is another thing that I'm really impressed with from speedrunners, in that it's not just a matter of sitting there reading internet forums and mashing buttons over and over again. A lot of research goes into it too. And a lot of that actually takes in the realm, a place of programming. You'll find people who actually disassemble the games. You know, they'll take a ROM of a game and they'll look at the code in that game and they'll figure out how all the pieces work, how it was written originally, and is there anything in it that can get exploited to their advantage. You know, conditions where the original programmers didn't intend for a thing to happen, but if you do the right sequence of events, you can make a thing happen that kind of breaks the game in a way and lets you do whatever you want. And that's really crazy, and that's where I think a lot of time gets spent and talent gets taken advantage of, in terms of looking at this code and seeing how does the game work at a fundamental level. How did they write it? And what can they do to take advantage of how it was written? And then from there, you know, it kind of blows the doors wide open. And people are still discovering things. I think the pace of progress in terms of, you know, shortening times has slowed down as time has gone on. But at the same time, I think there's still a lot to be discovered. I think while a lot has been discovered, there's still more. And where we go from there, I think is really exciting. You know, I think as times have gotten shorter and shorter, but the distance between the times, you know, has gotten less and less. There are fewer gains to be had. I think that actually gets us a little bit closer to finding another major discovery, you know, in a game that lets you shave another significant chunk of time off. that sort of thing. So speedrunning is really just kind of a combination of just crazy skill, like hand-eye coordination skill, and the ability to understand code and understand how games work and try to find exploits and glitches within that might save you some time. Obviously, glitches and exploits may or may not fall under that 100% kind of category. But I think even seeing what they can do with that is really cool. Just some of the bizarre stuff that you can use to trigger screen wraps and that sort of thing, where if you stand in the right place and do this specific thing, you can basically get your character to shoot from where they are all the way to the end of the level without having to touch anything. It's like they kind of tunnel through the background. Or like Oil Ocean in Sonic 2, great example. I don't think the game designers intended for you to be able to potentially swim through that oil for the entirety of a level and skip, all of the platforming and enemies and stuff above. But speedrunners figured out that you can basically do that. It's not without risk, but it's kind of funny to watch them just sit there and kind of bounce through the oil at the bottom of the screen and just skip all the crap above them. And in some ways, yeah, maybe that's a cheat, because it's like, well, you're just kind of, skipping everything. You're not actually using a whole lot of mad skills to, jump on enemies and get through these obstacles and all that without, getting hit and without losing time. But just the creativity, I think, in figuring out, hey, you know what, we can just totally take this other path, and we don't think the developers ever intended for anyone to take that. That's fun, It's the secret passageways that are kind of mysterious and fun to discover and realize that, that takes you somewhere that you never thought you would have been able to go. The other thing that I'm really happy about the speedrun community is that there does seem to be a sense of altruism to it. Not just towards other speedrunners. And I'm not saying that there isn't controversy in the speedrun community. Anytime you get human beings together trying to do something, there's going to be controversy. But other than just the ability to share and teach each other, this is how you play this game, these are the best ways to get through it as quickly as you can, these are the glitches. But there have also been organizations that have gotten together for a bigger purpose in terms of things like charity. I am a big fan of the Games Done Quick series. Awesome Games Done Quick, which is done kind of in the middle of winter, and then Summer Games Done Quick, obviously during the summer. I'm proud to say that the last 2 Summer Games Done Quick have been right here in my hometown of Minneapolis. I'm hoping that they'll do it again in 2017, and maybe this year I can actually go and watch it. That'd be cool. But in any event, the Games Done Quick series is all about charity. They get a whole bunch of speedrunners in. They play a whole variety of different games. It's not all just everyone playing Mario and Sonic. A huge variety of games. And then people donate money for great causes like Doctors Without Borders, and a whole bunch of other, really well-deserving charities. And I think that's cool. And they've raised a ridiculous amount of money over the years. I don't remember the exact number, but it's in the millions of dollars, which is a lot that's been raised for charity. So I'm a huge fan of that. I really think it's a whole bunch of awesome people doing a bunch of awesome stuff for awesome causes. So I would encourage you to support that sort of thing. Maybe not specifically Games Done Quick. I mean, I think everyone should support causes they believe in. But if you are, pretty hardcore into the video game scene and you dig speedrunning, throw in a few bucks towards Games Done Quick, one of those series, I think is probably one of the best things you can do. So with that, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on speedrunning? Have you seen some incredible ones? Have you given it a shot yourself? Are you a speedrunner? Are you into it? Can you lend more insight into the community? Maybe that I don't get to see as kind of an outsider looking in. What are some of the games that you think are the coolest to speedrun? Sonic, I think, right off the bat is kind of one of the first ones that comes to mind, just because it's a game that was originally designed to be played fast. Are there other ones that you wouldn't necessarily think would be good for a speed run? Be sure to leave all of your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm, of course, also interested in hearing your suggestions for future topics, anything you want me to talk about during one of these podcast episodes. Be sure to leave those down in the comments as well. At the very tail end here, I'm going to give you a little bit of a programming note. As you can tell, it's getting dark outside. This is winter in the state of Minnesota, and we're starting to run out of light, both on my way to and from work. So I may switch to doing these in more of a studio kind of a setting, not so much in the car. We'll have to see how that goes. The reason why I've been doing these in the car is because it's time that I otherwise have wasted. Just driving to from work, what else am I going to do? If I can talk to you, that gives me something to do with that time because I'm pretty busy otherwise. But I'll try to find time for the podcast one way or another. Don't worry about that. But if some of the future ones aren't in the car, don't be surprised. That's what's going on. So if you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcount. And as always, thanks for watching.